exactly.
So, and then there's more.
Well, we found out later too. Way she described how he whipped it out, so to speak, couldn't have been done because the type of underwear that he was wearing, with his bulletproof vest, the way it
Right.
was, it was like that. There's just no way he could have done that either. But it required a lot more than just unzipping and whipping it out.
Right.
So,
Which many of the accusers say Daniel did. That he
yep,
was just able to just instantly just whip it out. Which, yeah, if you see the amount of things that Daniel wears, the bulletproof vest, the what do they call them? The compression pants, all
pants,
these
yep,
things that would not allow his penis to just come flopping out real easily. You know what I
yep.
mean? Anyway, so that's another part, and then
Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
speaking of illusion of justice, you know, what do we think of the secret hearings between the prosecution and the judge in this case recently? Like, I don't know. Well, let's hear from the attorney, Travis. How normal does that seem to you?
It's not normal at all. It's a star chamber hearing, so they hold this ex parte hearing with just the prosecutors and the judge about the state's DNA expert. What's her name?
Oh well, it's the mother-in-law, isn't it?
Of Rocky Gregory. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I forget her name.
they have a 2-day hearing about this expert, and presumably about problems she's had, the type of stuff you would want for cross-examination, or as is still firmly part of the defense issues in the case. They wanted to get that information to their own expert to evaluate if this could have had an impact. So they have this 2-day hearing, just the prosecutors, witnesses, they're asking questions, and then they finally convince the trial court judge. So let's back up a second. So Daniel's found guilty and given, whatever, 266,000 years to run consecutively, whatever it was. And
Right.
he appeals. There's one appellate level in Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals, OCCA, goes up there. Then this issue comes out about the DNA expert. They send it back down to the trial court to do an evidentiary hearing on whatever issue came up about the DNA expert.
Right.
So he holds an in-camera hearing with just the prosecutors. They call witnesses, introduce exhibits over 2 days, excluded the defense attorneys from cross-examining those witnesses. He wasn't even going to let them see the transcripts and testimony. Finally, the trial court allowed the defense attorneys to review the transcripts and the exhibits. Then they filed a motion to unseal it to the extent that they could give that information to the defense DNA expert to address certain things on the appeal. The trial court refused to do that. It goes back up to the OCCA. The OCCA rules yeah, it was error for you not to allow the defense attorneys into that hearing, but it's harmless error. So,
Right. Yeah.
um, uh, and it's still all sealed, and we still don't see a problem in not turning that information. It's just bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, you contrast that. We're bringing up a lot of other documentaries today, but you contrast that with the documentary in Massachusetts with the two lab people,
Right. The drug labs.
and
Right.
and they're getting high on their own supply, and I mean,
One of them
just
was.
one of them was, and
Yeah.
the other had some
She was
issues where
basically
her
taking
whole life.
15 samples and testing one of them, and then putting those results onto all the samples that she was. So
Right, and then the other lab person, just got caught up in
using.
well, just being successful, and the number of tests, and none of her supervisors were like, why is she testing 10 times more than the average
Right.
person? How is that possible? Who cares, man? She can knock out the work.
Right.
Like wow, bizarre. But why? What? We're worried about protecting the professional reputation. I mean, this could be done. Yeah, we don't want this personal information to come out of her personnel file. That can be handled. So now there's always this cloud. Why is this lab person being protected? When we know lab people are gypsies, they leave one state for manufacturing false evidence and go to another state, or they get a pretty lucrative practice in bite mark evidence, and then all of a sudden their cases get called into question, and they're smoking cigarettes in a bar talking about Confederate heroes. I mean, what was that? That's recent documentaries, the Innocence Files,
that's
right?
The Innocence Files, and that's
Michael West.
Michael right?
West.
Yeah. His preferred drug, Miller High Life.
Yeah, but this is what happens if you lose objectivity, and But that hearing, to get back to your original question, it's just the most bizarre thing I've ever seen, and it's probably not the type of case the U.S. Supreme Court's going to hear, because they have so many other issues to deal with. But kind of disappointed that the OCCA it was a footnote, by the way, in their opinion.
Right.
There was a footnote about that hearing.
Oh, wow.
And I guess they didn't figure, attorneys like me read footnotes, or
right.
Daniel's attorney. But no, it's like, what? No, this has got to be wrong. And then I read the United States Supreme Court brief, which really fleshes that out, and it's like a 2-day hearing about the most important witness in the trial, the DNA expert, and they weren't even going to turn over the transcripts and the exhibits until the last second. They finally did that, and then they won't even let that be turned over to the defense's expert. That's really all I needed to read. I don't need to that puts this case on its
Yeah.
ear, and it needs to go back for an evidentiary hearing on the DNA stuff.
Right.
Daniel's lawyers need to be able to put on DNA experts to testify about the conclusions of the state's DNA expert, number one. Number two, they need to be able to go back and comment on what the prosecutor argued was the significance of the evidence. And if, you know, that, if they've made a false assertion about what that evidence means under, you know, Reed v. Texas and some other cases,
Right.
that case merits a new trial.
Right.
And seems to be some very, very strong arguments about that.
Yeah. And I'll go ahead and, folks, so you guys can understand and get an idea of what we're talking about, I'll put in a little clip here now for you guys to see where it shows, you'll see these people showing up to the courthouse and headed into the judge's chambers and that sort of stuff. So here, have a look.
Secret court hearings that could end up costing Oklahoma City. Fox 25's Phil Cross was the first to tell you who was at the secret proceedings as part of the Daniel Holtzclaw appeal.
But what does that mean for the case? And what does it mean for taxpayers who are footing the bill for both prosecuting the former cop and defending the city against civil rights complaints? Tonight, Phil Cross gives us a closer look at a Fox 25 follow-up.
In prison for what is likely the rest of his life, former police officer Daniel Holtzclaw maintains he did not sexually assault, rape, or do anything inappropriate with the women he was convicted of assaulting during traffic stops. He's appealing his sentence, but the state has held secret hearings about key information that could impact his freedom. Only no one from his defense team was allowed to attend.
He's on pins and needles. He wants to know, is this good news? Is this bad news? What is it?
Brian Bates is one of Holtzclaw's most ardent defenders. He worked on the case as an investigator and now operates a website in defense of Holtzclaw.
I don't care what side you come down on whether or not Daniel is guilty or innocent. What people need to be aware of is this could happen to them eventually. They could find themselves in the crosshairs. There could be secret hearings going on. There could be things being discussed that are going to affect your and your family's life, and you're not going to have any input.
Thanks to surveillance video from outside the secret hearing, we know the two-day proceeding included a team of prosecutors and the deputy police chief, along with Oklahoma City's chief civil attorney. The city attorney said he wouldn't comment on his role at the hearing, whether he was there to testify or acting as an attorney for the police department. The victims in Holtzclaw's case are suing Oklahoma City, which means the hearing could either hurt that case or create new legal problems for OKC if it is focused on wrongdoing to Holtzclaw, which is what those who have followed the case the closest believe.
If you're asking me to guess, I would say this is obviously in Daniel's favor. The prosecution has circled the wagons. I can guarantee you, if any of this information was negative to Daniel, they'd have sent it out in a press release.
But even for those convinced of the criminal conviction, there was another party kept out. The victims, who say they were sexually assaulted, were also not allowed inside that hearing that could impact their lives. And the public, which pays for everything from the prosecution to the light bills that keep the courtroom illuminated, is left in the dark. Phil Cross, Fox 25 News.
The Oklahoma County DA's office has not returned our multiple messages about the case, but in the past they have told us the new information has nothing to do with allegations of wrongdoing by the DA's office or prosecutors involved in the case.
You know, dude, you caught me off guard then, because when you said about this, the secret court hearings and stuff, I thought, what, you're on about in Manitowoc? But you know, the thing is, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if that sort of thing went on in Manitowoc. It's just that, well, I suppose Daniel's fortunate in that there is this footage, this coverage from the cameras of this going on, isn't it?
Right, he's fortunate that somebody was hip to it and got this footage and made it available. Yep. So, you know, that worked out in his favor. So right. I mean, these are some of the things that are going on in Daniel's case, folks. Why I tell you, I mean, We've been complaining about crap like this with the Avery and Dassey investigation for, well, me, for 4.5 years now. Some other people didn't get into it quite when I did originally, but there's still a lot of us out here complaining about these very same things, very similar things in the Avery Dassey investigation. This investigation was poor. The things we're looking at here with these prosecutors, with this secret little meetings and hearings and everything, this is what people are. Something's going on under the table. Something. There's something being hidden and kept out of sight here, and that's why those secret hearings took place. I mean, it's just bizarre. How could you meet without the defense being present at this point? It's like, I understand they make when they're making the arrest warrant. Oh, the defense isn't there because technically he hasn't been arrested yet. Okay, fine. Maybe that's fine. The defense isn't there at that point. But any point after that, if the defense isn't there, I'm sorry, it's inexcusable in my opinion. Absolutely inexcusable. I just, it's just absolutely bizarre. So,
no, then, dude, hold on a sec. Quick question.
Yeah.
You say you've been doing this for 4 years. Yeah?
Sorry, 4.5, yes.
4.5 years, right? Well, that's how long Making a Murder's been out. And you must have did you start doing videos straight away? Or are you on about you following
I was in it. I was in the Facebook groups. I was from January of 2016. I was in the Facebook groups and YouTube and everything else. I wasn't broadcasting yet, but
And in all that time, have you ever, for any sort of slight moment, thought, actually, do you know what? Stephen Brendan could be guilty of this.
Okay. Yes, the answer to that question is yes. In the first 8 months, I believe that. Basically, I can tell you I wasn't 100% certain about Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the answer to that question. Now, moving on to the DNA, folks. So, obviously, the last
next
thing
question.
Last thing here. Yes.